On today's show, the Cleveland Cavaliers are heading towards a playoff full of pressure. Here are the four people, not just players, but people facing pressure this postseason. Let's dive in.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. I admit it, I have a competitive side, and it is a big fan of Monopoly Go, the mobile hit twist on classic Monopoly. So join your friends and download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store or Google Play. I'm Chris Manning, that is Evan Dammarrell. We're here to get you ready for the playoffs. Jake Stevens is always on the back end producing this episode, and it's pressure check-in time. We're going to go through JB Bickerstaff today. We're going to go through Evan Mobley and Darius Garland, and we're going to look at Donovan Mitchell. We think those are the four people with the most pressure on them this playoff run. Everyone is going to have some version of that. You could look at other guys, but those are the four people that we think here have the most at stake, most, frankly, input and effect on what is going to happen for the Cavs in the first round and if they get out of the first round and beyond. Evan, to start with JB Bickerstaff, I think the way I look at it is pretty simple. Not everything that has not worked for this team is his fault. Injuries, that's not like he asked to have injuries or cause injuries. Like, that is not his fault. I'm not even sure if I would say he's the number one thing that hasn't totally worked at times this year. I think there are other things I would point to. But in this league, the coaches are the fall guys. Coaches, for better or for worse, are easier to move on from than players. It is easier optically and to maintain relationships if you just get rid of the coach. I'm not saying JB Bickerstaff has done a perfect job or should be guaranteed to keep his job or anything like that if they lose in the first round, but I think in a lot of ways, it feels like his coaching future, maybe his head coaching future, but I think particularly with the Cavs, is on the line with what goes on here.
Yeah, I mean, even with me being a little bit more optimistic heading into this series against the Magic, that this playoff run will dictate JB Bickerstaff's future with the team. I think he is coaching from a warmer seat right now, even though if you were to ask him straight without the luxury of truth serum or Chris Manning's truth serum, you would not really get a straight answer saying like, no, everything's fine, yada, yada, so on and so forth. But like, I don't want to say he's coaching for his job, but I think he is coaching for security at least, or at least a more compelling argument, because yeah, you can factor in the injuries, throwing a wrench in everything the Cavs wanted to do this year. But at the same time, you also want to be mindful of the fact that like the Cavs have underperformed 3 years in a row now, I'm going to say, under him. Like in the play-in tournament, they completely flamed out and just flattened out and I don't want to say gave up, but like were just outplayed by the Nets and the Hawks, especially the Hawks. That was a stunning loss. The Knicks series, we all know how that went, and I think that is creating a lot of anxiety and angst amongst fans and people who just maybe observed this team from afar. But now you just look ahead, like people are frustrated with Bickerstaff supposedly throwing the fourth quarter, which, you know what, we're not a fly on the wall. We don't know what his thought process was behind it other than him publicly saying like the plan is to play key rotation guys X amount of minutes. I think Max Strus got the luxury bump because of the triple-double watch he was on. But regardless, like you get past Orlando, assuming you do, if the Cavs push the Celtics to the brink, let's say they play Boston or Miami or Orlando or, well, I guess it's mathematically impossible. So it's either Miami or Orlando. So if you push one of those guys to the brink and either you sneak into the Eastern Conference Finals or you just go down swinging like it's a best of 6 or 7 game series and it's a hard fought best of 6 or 7 game series, like, yeah, you have a little bit more ammunition if you're JB Bickerstaff in terms of just making the argument to stick long term and continue to keep building out this vision. But time is a flat circle, and there continues to just be a recurring theme where these Cavs teams under Bickerstaff start out really hot. Ever since they've gotten Evan Mobley, this year was a little weird, but like they did have high moments earlier in the season. And by the time the playoffs or just the postseason rolls around and the game's tighter, they choke, and they just are not the same team we had expected them to be in the regular season. So yeah, I'm morbidly curious to see like this opening round series will kind of like give me a little bit of like a pulse check, but we'll see how it goes, you know?
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously we're going to see how it goes. I think the thing with JB that if you can go look back at last year, it didn't feel like he acquitted himself well against Tom Thibodeau. Like that was one of, I think, our takeaways from that series. It wasn't the A1 headline because he didn't do the Jared Allen thing and give like a quote that kind of let him be kind of mocked in the face of what went wrong there. But like he, I think, struggled in that series. I think he struggled to find adjustments. I think we feel at times now that there are sometimes things that are not the most creative that he does. I mean, I have thought a lot of times this year, Evan, that I think a different and look, this is true of every team, but in particular the context of the team that we're talking about here and that we watch and cover more than any other, I've found that like I wonder if a different coach what they might do with this roster that would look differently if they're healthy. Like would like another coach just be like, you know what, like Sam Merrill's just like blocked in as a rotation guy for me because of his shooting. I think other coaches might go that route. I think there are times where I feel like there could be more gotten here, and there's things he does well in terms of, you know, connecting with guys. I think the stewardship has been really important. I found myself just wondering, okay, what is he adding all the time, and what if you're at this point and your next step is coming and you need to take that next step, are you sure that's the move? And I think if barring something really drastic, like I think I could see a world, Evan, where like whatever happens with Mitchell or doesn't, I could see like that being like a soft reset. Like again, that's unfortunate, but like a JB, they lose in the first round, lose in the second round, whatever. It's just not deemed good enough. They just say, you know what, like that's the way to soft reset this. I could easily see that being the case.
Yeah, I can easily see that being the case as well. And I mean, especially in this opening round against Orlando, like on like Jamal Mosley, the head coach of the Magic, has zero playoff coaching experience. Most of this Cavs, I guess the Cavs as well, but more so the Magic don't really have a lot of playoff experience either. If you come out flat, especially with home court advantage, and you don't go up 2-0, and I don't want to say commanding, but at least like in a way to say like, okay, the Cavs have momentum on their side, and they are heading into Orlando with a pretty clear and concise game plan, and just a conscientious plan in general, just to kind of keep rolling even when you're not at home. And the Cavs are a better road team this year, so maybe that helps a little bit too, but it really is going to see how creative JB Bickerstaff can get, and can he outfox a coach that doesn't have any playoff experience? And sure, like Bickerstaff is like 2-10, I think, all time in the playoffs, but people can correct me on that however they want. I know he lost the series 1-4, so I guess he's 2-8. But either way, not a great record. We'll just kind of see how this flows, but yeah, it could dictate the flow of this offseason too. And just like what the most pressing need is like, if the Cavs get bounced or they look rocky, they somehow limp their way into the second round after kind of getting bloodied and bludgeoned by the Magic, and then they just get absolutely punked by the Celtics and they don't show up much of a fight. Sure, health again could be a factor there, but if, let's say during the exit interviews, Kobe Altman speaks with the media and says like, no, JB Bickerstaff will be our coach next year, I would be very surprised. Like there needs to be a pretty stark tonal shift just from how they played it this season, and just more than anything, find consistency so we have an understanding of who they are, at least in the playoffs.
I think even beyond the first two games, the first quarter of game one, what we view as the game plan, I'm going to be fascinated by. That's going to tell us a lot. What is their plan A with over a week to prepare for an opponent you know? Like it's funny how this works out. When you are at Cleveland and you are the 4 seed, you have more time to prepare for a specific opponent than like Boston does or the 2-seed Knicks do. Like you have this, you know exactly what you're getting for a week. So, and you've played them 4 times. What do you and your coaching staff come up with over the next week? I am going to be fascinated by just that. First quarter, what is your offensive game plan? What is your defensive game plan? What do we see from that? Does it work? Does it not? That first quarter is going to be such I think, an instant vibe check on the job JB is going to do in this series. So a lot ahead here. And look, Kobe Altman, I just want to be clear, I don't think Kobe Altman would be removed from scrutiny as well. He just has the benefit of having the lever of being able to fire someone, and JB Bickerstaff does not. That is just like the corporate structure of a professional basketball team.
And as you had noted, when things are bad, the first plan of action is always to fire the coach. And that usually could be a system shock, maybe a correcting factor, but like it may not do much in the summer. But like they move on from Bickerstaff. Who they hire next will certainly dictate the flow and like maybe how serious they are about contending. Like maybe they bring in a retread like Mike Budenholzer, who has that championship experience, or they think outside the box and like they look at like a young assistant who maybe has the experience like a Jordy Fernandez or something. But like there's avenues the Cavs could look at, but obviously we're maybe putting the cart in front of the horse a little too much here. We don't know what's going to happen in the playoffs. But yeah, like Bickerstaff is probably the guy who's most likely to be considered expendable when this season ends, barring like something completely unforeseen in the playoffs.
Yeah, if they have like a good showing and even in 2 rounds, you could see them. And he's also owed money for like multiple more seasons, so that also could play a part to how willing are they willing to just like eat some serious money. That's all part of this. All right, up next, Darius Garland, Evan Mobley, 2 guys you would think of as big building blocks for the Cleveland Cavaliers. We're going to get into them and their status after this. Today's episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. Sometimes we need the opportunity to get something off of our chest. Big or small, certain things can really start to get to you. It's important to let that out, especially to someone who's unbiased on your life. So today, I want to say how I really feel about something. You might even be thinking about the same. For me, it's thinking about the NBA playoffs, and it's thinking about how I wish we had 5-game first-round series. I think they drag on sometimes too long. We just frankly don't need 7 games of all these series. Let's bring some chaos back in with 5-game series. Evan, how do you feel about that take?
The grand machine of capitalism will disagree with us, but
yes.
No, less is more. And also, like, with how banged up the NBA has been this season, like giving the guys the opportunity not to maybe overdo it in the first or maybe even second round and really let them lay it all out on the line in the conference finals and the NBA finals would make a much more compelling game to watch.
Yeah, give me 5-game series. I'm all about this. No way to transition from this, but therapy can be different for everyone. Most of us have even bigger problems than our favorite sports team, and it's important to get things off your chest every once in a while. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely aligned, designed to be flexible and suited to your schedule. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. All right, we're moving on here to Darius Garland and Evan Mobley. And Evan, tell me if this is true or false. Those 2 guys and what they are and what we think of them is going to be impacted one way or the other as potential, how we think of them as building blocks for the future of this team, whether Donovan Mitchell's on it or Donovan Mitchell is not, is going to be impacted by how the playoffs go.
Yeah, then I want to start with Mobley first, just because it's still kind of popping around in my head a little bit. Like, when I spoke with Spencer German about this on The Fan, like he asked me about Mobley's 3-point shot and like that being like a playoff weapon for him. And I think that's a valid question. Like, do you see more of the Mobley who showed the confidence flaring out to the perimeter? Like, you think of that game-winning shot he made. Like, he created so many passing lanes by doing that, and then saw correctly that Philly wasn't going to close out on him, and he hit a 3 with confidence. Like, that is an encouraging tentpole of Evan Mobley's growth in year 3 that we haven't been able to see a lot of because injuries and just like weird inconsistencies from him and just this roster overall have made it hard to frankly evaluate him or this whole team. But like, if he is gun shy, especially against physicality, and like I think the Magic are going to hit him with a lot of physicality. I think Paolo Banchero is going to be an interesting defensive assignment for him because you'd assume he starts games defending Banchero. Maybe Bickerstaff matches Banchero with Mobley minute for minute if you want to maybe just, obviously put your best defender overall on Orlando's best offensive threat for a very bad offensive team to begin with. But can Mobley handle that? Can he handle the physicality and pressure? And can he just be that supporting link for Allen when maybe Allen gets beaten on the boards? Because the Cavs, like, against the Sixers, and they did it against the Grizzlies as well, like, we're getting killed on the offensive glass, and then Bickerstaff made the adjustment, the Cavs did too, like, where they kept both bigs and kind of formed like a pseudo triangle around the basket to completely box out everybody to get those prevent second chance opportunities. So for me, long story short, like, is Mobley comfortable with that 3-point shot? Because I think that can be something that does create a lot of fun wrinkles for the Cavs offensively and makes life more palatable for them. And then, like, can he handle the physicality? Because he was a non-factor against the Knicks last year. Like, I know people really like to zero in on Allen and the offensive rebounds or Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland struggling, but like Evan Mobley was very one note and unremarkable that entire series against New York.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like he gave you nothing in the playoffs last year. He's had a very up and down season due to injury more than anything else, but nothing that has been you felt great about, right? Nothing that you felt particularly enthused about consistently with him. If he has a great playoffs, or at least an impactful playoffs, then I think you're in a world where things could pop off. Things could, like, you could feel invigorated about him. But if it's not, and it's another struggle series, or like, Paolo Banchero goes off on him or something like that in that matchup, because he's going to have a big defensive responsibility in the series pretty directly, I would assume. Then, like, where does that leave you with him? What are you thinking about him? That's a real, I think, open question. Garland, I think, is, and Mobley also about to maybe get a max rookie extension, and people I'm sure have thoughts about that, based on how he plays. Garland is a little trickier, I think, just because he's already gotten paid, but he's been so blah this year, Evan, that I think this is like, can he redeem himself? That's how I'm kind of viewing the Darius Garland playoff situation.
Yeah, and you think about game 2, I guess, against the Knicks, where Garland especially, and I think the Cavs too, like it's the same old story. Like, if you blitz Donovan Mitchell, can you dare the Cavs to have Darius Garland step up and be like the guy who responds to the lesser defensive pressure and just keeps the offense moving and being dynamic? And I think Orlando will employ similar strategies, and you really hope that Darius Garland is, one, physically feeling right, whether it's the ankle or like the recovery from jaw surgery still, or, just the stuff he's dealt with off the court all season long too. Like, you have to empathize with him with that, but like, can he step up in the moment when the Cavs need him to? Yeah, there's been glimmers of it, but we haven't seen it like on a very, mostly the way that this whole entire Cavs team is on a consistent basis. And so I just think, like, obviously the defensive assignment is 100% or not. Donovan Mitchell is a guy that the Magic are going to hone in on defensively. And when they do that, and if Mitchell gets uncomfortable, especially with how long and lanky the Magic are, or just how much of a pit bull Jalen Suggs is going to be against him too, like, you need Garland to step up in that fashion and just really be the primary creator in the offensive hub that we have seen him be capable of. But it's just hard because, like, it's hard to evaluate because of injuries, but also, like, he's been wildly inconsistent all season long, where I can understand the distaste. I think it's a little dramatic, but also you really expect more out of a guy that is capable of doing it. So I empathize with that.
Yeah, and look, last year again, he also was not good at the playoffs. This is just like kind of the thing. We can empathize.
Game 2, no.
Yeah, bad. Like, just not good. Last year in the playoffs, if you look at his per game numbers, he averaged 20. Okay, shot 43%. Well, the numbers aren't as bad as you would think. I just don't remember it being good, I guess, is the way I kind of think about it. Like, they lost in 5. He had the one big game. The per game numbers are like there. The assist numbers aren't really there. He struggled on 2s. And I just can't see them winning against this Orlando defense unless he plays well, is kind of the thing. Like, if he does not distribute well, make good decisions, make enough shots, and just play at a level we kind of expect him to, like, they're not going to win. Again, we can empathize him all we want. I think we've been very fair to him this whole time, and thinking about that, there's just a point where either doing it well or you're not, and if we're calling it fairly, I think we have to look at it and say, like, okay, are you actually playing in the way he needs to if they're going to actually, like, win a playoff series or do any kind of damage? Like, there's a lot on him just to be a good version of himself. I'm not saying I don't think we can anticipate him being like the best version of Darius Garland. I feel like that ship this year has kind of sailed. But if he can be a more even version of himself, it would go a long, long way against a team that's going to be really good defensively in a 7-game series.
Yeah, and they're just both so fascinating to me too. Like, they are your proverbial stars in this big 3 the Cavs are building. Like, we dumped on Jarrett Allen heading into the season, saying, like, he's not a part of this core 4. He's a very high-end role player, but, like, the overall hierarchy of, like, Cleveland's best players heading into the postseason is Donovan Mitchell. I don't think that's a hot take. Then Jarrett Allen, and then, like, it's a little muddled. Is it Max Strus? Is it Darius Garland? Is it Evan Mobley? Like, you need, and I'm not going to knock Strus. Like, he's been very, very good for Cleveland this season. he is not on like the same level as like Garland or Mobley, and you really need them to step up. And unfortunately, you're asking them to step up in a very high pressure cooker environment where either the pipe's gonna burst, or they are gonna find comfort in the chaos and really step up when the Cavs need them to, which is ideal, of course. But how are you willing to take that gamble? And I mean, the Cavs have no choice, but like, will it blow up in their face, or will it all just work out? And optimistically, you hope it does, but realistically, like, you have to kind of toe the line a little bit here.
Who would you say you have more confidence in?
I want to say Garland. No, Mobley. I want to say that's the thing. I can't. Mobley. I think Mobley, just because the defensive stuff is there. I think he's bigger, stronger. If the shot hits and he does a good job containing Banchero individually, it's going to be a collective effort, of course, but he's going to be the head of that defensive snake. Like, I think he's more capable and comfortable of doing that. Whereas for Garland, like, it just feels like he goes through the motions a little bit too much this year, and like, I can't pull on that safety line when I don't know if he's going to respond.
Yeah, I think it's Mobley as well, just because the defensive floor gives you something. You know?
Yeah. Especially against like a bad offensive team, if you're able to just completely shut things down overall, in terms of what Orlando can actually do offensively. Like, it's easier to coast if you're Cleveland, especially if Mobley's just able to hit that defensive level and just raise Cleveland up to like that very elite defensive status that we've kind of grown accustomed to them playing at.
But, and haven't played at in a couple of weeks in the regular season at least. So
correct.
If it gets back in form, Mobley could have a lot to do with that. All right, up next, Donovan Mitchell, another player with some pressure on him. That's coming up after this. Today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. We have all been there, either as a player or a fan. It's halftime and the scoreboard is not looking good. You're feeling low, not sure you or your team can pull out a win. That's when you dig deep, lift up your head, and say to yourself, time to get back in the game, pull off some bank heists, and take as much of my friend's money as I can. That's right, the smash hit mobile game Monopoly Go lets you compete with your friends to get the most riches and biggest empire. It's a Monopoly you love, but on your phone anytime with tons of new twists, including leaderboards to compare your progress to your buddies. There's so much to do. Play on countless dynamic Monopoly boards, make your friends a banker by smashing their landmarks with a wrecking ball, charge other players rent for your iconic properties. You can even work with your friends to crack open community chests, and in tournaments, you get extra rewards and climb the leaderboard. So get back out there, put on your game face, and download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store or Google Play. So, Evan, Donovan Mitchell to me is not like number one on the list of people with pressure on him. I think like because he's going to get paid, because teams will want him if he wants to leave, because the Cavs will give him lots of money if he wants to stay. I think he's under pressure because I wonder if he has another blah playoff series after he's had a couple in a row and doesn't acquit himself super well, and it looks a certain way or ends up a certain way. I wonder if the perception on him goes in a certain direction that makes people look at him just a little bit differently, and what that means for Mitchell and where he's going. I think this is, injury stuff aside with him, I think this is going to be an important series, if not a whole playoff run, for him to actually play well and perform at the level I think we expect him to.
Yeah, I agree. Like, the injury stuff does really muddle things, because I talked about it on our initial thoughts of them playing the Magic. Like, I feel confident because Mitchell's showing that burst. I think in his last game against the Pacers, he was 5 of 5 on shots at the rim. Like, that's encouraging because Mitchell is a downhill player, when the Cavs just function a lot better when their guards, especially Mitchell, are playing downhill and just creating constant pressure at the basket. But it really does hinge on his health and just like where he's at physically. Is he able to handle the rigors and stress of not playing 30 to 35 minutes like he has been lately, but possibly playing like an entire game and maybe extra minutes too, because the Cavs just need to tap out everything they can from him. And that's, the expectation when it comes to your best player, of course, but you really want him to also just be himself and not press, because there's moments he presses too, but like it's just a fine line the Cavs kind of have to walk with Mitchell, and Mitchell has to walk as well, just because you don't want him to hurt himself, of course, but also like you don't want him to hurt the team either.
Yeah, and look, he is at I think an interesting part of his career. He is 27. He'll be 28, I think, before next season, or around the time next season starts. He is set to get paid potentially lots of money by Cleveland, or a year from now. It's also like this is his prime.
Yeah.
This is physically, like, this is his window to be the best version of himself. It's not that his career is going to be over in like 2 years or anything like that. I'm not trying to suggest that, but this is like the window when you want to see him go as hard and as high as he possibly can. And is this gonna allow for that? And also, like, again, the Cavs need him to win this series. If he is not beating, whether it's Jonathan Isaac, who's awesome and just an absolute menace as a defender, or if it's Jalen Suggs, or whoever is defending him in this series, and whatever he has to do one-on-one, and whatever he has to do creatively, if he is not a good version of himself, if he is not productive and just and scoring a bunch and maybe averaging like 30 a night or something like that, or 27 a night, something, the Cavs are winning the series, and a lot of questions are coming about this team and his place in it, and maybe him as well. I think that's so all on the line here for this first round series.
Yeah, it's absolutely all on the line. I think his future with the team, and you correctly noted, like, he has been, and we've talked about this quite a bit on the show too, like, he has been very one-note and ineffective in these last few series. And, you know, maybe avoiding the boogeyman of Jalen Brunson helps quite a bit too, but yeah, I mean, it's a series of unfortunate events, because I think of straw breaking the camel's back moments, and like the Cavs losing Mobley and Garland could have been that, but the Cavs dug deep and found a way to kind of keep rocking and rolling. But like this Mitchell injury, and maybe how this playoff run goes, clouding his future with the team, could be really difficult. Like, I think of Ken Garman getting really, really frustrated on the radio today when, like, he said, like, listen, the Cavs gave up 3 first-round picks for a second-round exit. Like, that's really, really, really bad asset management. And I know people say, like, oh, Laurie Marketing, Colin Sexton, Ochai Agbaji, who's almost as old as you and I at this point, but it's just like, yeah, you expect him to be your overall best player, and he is your best player, but like, is he able to be the guy? As you know, to go way, way back to when we were talking about what the Cavs were really lacking, like, can he be the dude for you that like just puts the team on his back and just carries them as far as he possibly can, with it being further than the second round, which is a place Mitchell has never gotten out of in his entire career.
He also has, I mean, none of these Cavs guys have won a playoff series.
Yeah.
He has not won a playoff series since 2001. First round, beat Memphis 4-1. He was 24. It's been 3 years. It's not all on him. That Utah situation ended really roughly on a bunch of fronts. He was just also not good in that last series in Utah. 20% from 3 in that series, under 40% from the field. With the Cavs last year, under 30% from 3, 43.3% from the field. Hasn't been good in the last 2 playoff series. Hasn't won a playoff series in 3 years. I think, like, look, totally fair or not.
Go to the bathroom and get off the pod kind of situation. Yeah,
it's like, I think it's time you kind of got to reestablish yourself as one of those guys at this point. And this is a what have you done for me lately business. And Mitchell's playoff stuff, yeah, I mean, unfortunately, just isn't at the level you would hope. I think to Ken's point, like, you give up 3 first-round picks for a guy that you hope could transform you. That totally hasn't happened.
Yeah, no, that's the issue. Is like, it just hasn't clicked. And last year, it was like catching lightning in a bottle. It was almost instantaneous, and it all just fizzled out. Like, an analogy is like the Joe Flacco magical run. It all just came crashing down in the playoffs, but I guess it's a simile, but either way, Mitchell just has been as good as advertised, but is he good enough? Is he the Robin to a possible Batman on a playoff or a possible title contender, or can he be the Batman where everyone else is supporting him. And like the Cavs have built a team that is very heliocentric to be around Donovan Mitchell's strengths, which is playing with pace, playing with space, and just locking down with like defenders around him and him stepping up on defense who need him to as well. It is going to be a tricky thing to navigate. And it really, I am morbidly curious to see how Saturday goes when they open it up, because that'll kind of be the tone setter. Because I think the last year, like, the emotions were a little high. The Cavs maybe were shell shocked, but like the Knicks kicked their teeth in and they calmed the waters a bit in game 2. But then like New York still smelled blood in the water and just put the Cavs away. Like the Cavs just make a statement right away, defend home court, and then go 1-0 after one game, 1-0 after another game. And it all really is going to depend on what type of player the Cavs get from Mitchell just to open the series altogether.
How would you rank these guys 1 to 4 in terms of most pressure to least pressure? So
Bickerstaff
JB,
has
Darius,
I think Bickerstaff has
Donovan.
the most pressure because he's coaching for his job. Like, he could be the head coach of the Cavaliers next year, or he becomes an assistant with another team, or he, takes the route of like the Cavs put him in a front office role, and like he kind of takes that on instead, even though he's still incredibly young to kind of be adopting that type of role as a head coach. But either way, there could be a completely total shift to like the coaching staff in general just completely change. I think the coaching staff in general is maybe like fighting for their jobs too. Like, what are you doing to maximize the development of these players that we've spent so much time and energy in? But I think it goes Bickerstaff, Garland, Mobley, Mitchell in that order, because like Mitchell has the luxury of like strong regular season play and also like the injury, the knee injury and the everything going against him. Whereas like Mobley, there's a lot of questions about him. Garland like has left more questions than answers about him. Like Mitchell, I kind of know who he is as a player. I mean, he does have another level. I want to see if he has it or not, but that's kind of my ranking at this point. But it can be fluid too. Like it could change on a game by game basis as well. Just if like one player steps up or like JB coaches well and another guy sucks, like that shifts things a little bit.
I would go, same way. I think Bickerstaff, Garland, Mobley, Mitchell. And I don't feel like, I don't think JB's debatable at 1. You could talk me into Mobley over Garland, I think, but I think Mitchell's 4, just in part because like he's a star that like even if like he will not get like ultimately he will not get if this flames out, I don't think he's ultimately getting the blunt of the blame for most people or the franchise for that matter.
Yeah,
like the Cavs are going to be like, yeah, we're cool, like we're going to try, like they're not going to do that, but they might like if they need to move on from someone else, you could see themselves doing that in some way. So interesting times, weird times.
Yeah, it is a weird time. And if let's say this, like worst case scenario, if the Cavs, because when I think about the Blazers keeping Chauncey Billups as head coach, if the Cavs, let's just say they lose in the first round, and the Cavs are like, yeah, JB Bickerstaff's going to be our coach next year. What is your level of concern going forward about how this team is going to keep growing and developing?
I think like a 6 or 7 out of 10. I think if this flames out again, I think whether it's JB or something else, I think this is demanding. I think this year, if anything, has demanded they need to evolve further than they kind of aimed to do last summer. I understand that's not easy to do, but I honestly think regardless of how this year ends, this year has like demanded some kind of evolution for the Cleveland Cavaliers. I really think like something is going to need to evolve here. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it has, like, it doesn't necessarily like have to be JB, but he would be the easiest one to just get a new voice in and run some things differently and kind of structure things differently. That would just be the easiest one to do something with.
Yeah, I think he just maybe need a new voice or a new perspective just running this team. And like, I like JB as a person. I think he is a good coach for this team right now, but I do wonder if the Cavs starting to hit that point of like, is this as far as he can take them coaching wise, or does he have another gear in him that we just have not seen yet, which just hasn't materialized over his times in Houston, Memphis, and now in Cleveland?
Yeah, I wonder if you might have seen the gear by now.
Yeah, I think we would have. So, and that's just the I guess the disappointing thing of it all too is like you feel like we would have seen it by now.
It's going to end there. I'm Chris Manning. That's Evan Dammarrell. Thanks again to Jake Stevens. Back tomorrow with more Locked On Cavs. Have a great rest of your day. Talk to you soon.